And we begin with breaking news. Israel says it has concluded retaliatory strikes on military targets in Iran. Loud explosions were reported around the capital, Tehran. The Israeli military says it hit Iran's missile manufacturing facilities, surface-to-air missile arrays, and other aerial capabilities across several areas of the country. Israel says its attack is in response to Iran's ballistic missile barrage earlier this month. Iran's military said that its air defenses had countered the strikes, that it said did only limited damage. Now, loud explosions have also been reported near the Syrian capital, Damascus. Israeli army spokesman Daniel Hagari confirmed that the airstrikes had been completed.
I can now confirm that we have concluded the Israeli response to Iran's attack against Israel. We conducted targeted and precise strikes on military targets in Iran, thwarting immediate threats to the state of Israel. The Israel Defense Forces has fulfilled its mission. If the regime in Iran were to make the mistake of beginning a new round of escalation, we will be obligated to respond.
DW correspondent Tania Krämer joins us now from Jerusalem. Tania, the attacks have concluded. Do walk us through what we know about these strikes that Israel says were on military targets in Iran.
Yeah, this retaliatory action by Israel unfolded over several hours last night, and people here who have not followed it overnight but are waking up to this news in Israel. But what we understand, so in the first reports of explosions came in Tehran around 2 a.m. local time here in Israel, and shortly after there was a first statement by the military actually confirming that it was indeed conducting, as it said, precise strikes on military targets in Iran. This has been long expected that Israel will retaliate to these earlier strikes in October, the ballistic missile attacks by Iran. Now, we have learned over the course of the hours a bit more from the military in another statement about these targets, that the army struck missile manufacturing facilities, surface-to-air missile defense systems, probably taking out some of the air defense. So indeed, it were military targets. There had been the concern all along that Israel might also attack energy infrastructure or nuclear sites. Now, the strikes at this moment appear to be calibrated in a way. However, we do not know the extent of the damage and the scale on the scope of these attacks. Now, the army has also said it has achieved its goals, among them, and that's quite interesting also, that it has more freedom of action in the near future. It also had passed on a warning to Iran now not to respond to this retaliatory action, as it puts it, because this would further escalate the situation. We also know at the moment, at least, there are no changes in the home front guidelines that usually gives an indication also if there's any imminent threat. This is directed to the public, to people here, to know how they should act and if there's any danger.
Yeah, Tania, at least we have some reaction from Iran now. Let's listen to a statement from the Iran's Air Defense Force that was read out on Iranian state TV.
This morning, the fake regime, in an act of escalation, attacked military bases in Tehran, Khuzestan, and Ilam provinces. The country's integrated air defense system successfully tracked and confronted the act of aggression. The attack caused limited damage to some areas. The scope of it is being investigated.
Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. What more do we know about Iran's response?
Well, I mean, this is basically what we got from them over the course of the night, that they are saying, somehow confirming that it was indeed military targets. As to this statement also that the air defense in Iran had engaged with those attacks, the incoming missile attacks, and that it was limited in scope, according to them, that it happened in 3 different provinces as well, that basically among them also the capital, Tehran. Now, in Israel, the reading of this statement is more or less that Iran is trying to downplay the scope and the scale of this attack, also maybe leaving a door open not to further escalate it. But, we have to wait and see whether we find out the exact amount of damage that was done, maybe through satellite images. But we don't know whether we will know more about it in the coming hours. But certainly for now, what Israel is projecting that it achieved its goals. It's warning Iran not to attack, but we haven't heard yet from the Iranian leadership what they intend to do about this attack.
Now, of course, Israel is already fighting a war on two other fronts, namely Lebanon and Gaza. What strategy is the Israeli government pursuing here?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand that this retaliatory attack didn't come out of nowhere. It has been planned. Israel had said it will respond to the missile attack by Iran on October 1st. And this attack by Iran was already retaliation, as it said at the time, for the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut and other leaders and senior commanders. So this has been, going on in a tit-for-tat between Israel and Iran for quite a while. The first time we saw a direct attack from Iran was basically in April, when it attacked Israel with drones and missiles. Most of them were intercepted at the time. At the time also Iran said this was in retaliation for an attack on on one of its embassy complexes in Damascus. And this comes, of course, against the backdrop of a long-standing shadow war between Iran and Israel that broke out in the open in April for the first time. And as you rightly said, the region now seeing a war, obviously this long war in Gaza for over a year, with these devastating consequences for civilians there, but also in Lebanon, southern Lebanon, a ground incursion there by Israel and airstrikes across the country there against Hezbollah. And of course this has brought both countries in a very dangerous situation of a tit for tat, and we have to wait and see now what the next moves will be in this also by Iran.
All right, Tania Krämer in Jerusalem there. Thank you so much, Tania. And let's go to Washington, D.C. now, where DW reporter Stefan Simons joins us. Stefan, what's been the response from the White House to those attacks?
Well, the White House is giving itself muted right now, but a few hours ago there was a response. Number one, the U.S. and the White House is emphasizing, absolutely adamant about emphasizing that it had no active or passive role in this retaliatory airstrike or military operation of Israel or by Israel against Iran. The White House is really keen on making Iran and everybody else know that they really had no part in this. However, the White House also said that the president, of course, as well as Vice President Harris, who is on the campaign trail here, were briefed in real time. There was a telephone conversation and a phone call between Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and his pendant, his equivalent in Israel, Secretary of Defense or Defense Minister Gallant. And Austin, the Pentagon chief here, emphasized there that the United States is in an enhanced, and that's a quote, enhanced force posture of the U.S. troops there. For what reason? To protect its own personnel, U.S. personnel stationed in the region as well as in Israel. As you know, there are 100 U.S. military personnel on site to man the THAAD system. This is an anti-missile system which was actually just delivered to Israel in the pretext of the announced retaliatory actions of Israel supposed to be taken against Iran. The White House saying that this was the right of Israel to defend itself, that it stands by Israel, that its support is ironclad for Israel to defend itself. But of course that it hopes, and that is of course hard to assess for the White House as for anybody else, that this will not escalate in any unmeasured form or to any unmeasured level.
You just mentioned like the U.S. support of Israel and its sovereignty and its right to defend itself is ironclad. But of course, the attack on Iran not only comes after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was touring the region in an effort to push for a ceasefire deal, with little progress there, as we can see, but also with the U.S. election just around the corner. And so the personnel in the White House could change sooner or later. So what does this mean now for U.S.-Israel relations?
Well, very good question, a very complex answer, I'm afraid, and we'll keep it fairly simple and short. First of all, it is really important to remember that the United States always has, and every administration has always made this claim, that the ironclad support of the United States for the safety and security of Israel, for the state of Israel. This will not change. Not in this administration, not in a maybe future administration of former President Donald Trump, who's trying to become the next president of this country in 10 days' time, as well as Kamala Harris. Both are on the same page on this one. Israel has the support of the United States when it comes to defend itself, and its right to defend itself against enemies in the region or anywhere else. However, of course, the Harris campaign it strikes a different tone at times, because it was, of course, Kamala Harris who said there is no doubt that Israel has the right to defend itself, and there were reasons for retaliate against Hamas in Gaza. But she also made the point always, and with the blessing, of course, of the United States President, of Joe Biden and his administration, she is part of course, that, the U.S. is not a friend of unmeasured actions of the Israelis, with 40,000 plus dead Palestinians in Gaza, with the engagement in southern Lebanon, etc. So this being said, there is no doubt that this will have and will be probably a topic on the campaign trail now. Donald Trump was always very clear about this. He is basically giving Israel a carte blanche, a free pass. Do whatever you want with Iran, or whatever you have to do to protect yourself. And if he becomes president, this is, well, probably expected. This situation right now between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Joe Biden is a little bit more complex. We had just 2 weeks ago reports about the president using quite some profanities when he talked about, off the record, of course, behind the curtains, behind closed doors, about Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Prime Minister's actions and agenda in all of this. So, yeah, those relationships are not that great. However, again, saying it again, because this is what we're hearing here from any expert, every expert, any administration official, and what you will hear in the next administration and what you have heard in the administrations decades ago and until now. There is no way that the United States will not support and stand by Israel if it defends its right for existence and for safety and security. Again, most important with this is also that the U.S. does not want, last point, does not want an escalation in this conflict. Right. Therefore, the U.S. tried and is trying, even if it becomes harder, to measure or to subdue Israel's response in a measured way, not to go overboard.
Okay. Well, DW Stefan Simons, thank you so very much for a complex answer to a complex question. Thank you so much, Stefan Simons there in Washington, D.C. And let's now also get some reaction from Lebanon, neighboring to Israel, of course. Journalist Stella Männer joined us in Beirut. Stella, no reactions from Lebanon just yet, but do tell us how this attack on Iran could influence the situation there.
Well, most people here among the population in Lebanon are very scared and frightened that this might escalate further. In one way, of course, because Hezbollah here in Lebanon is linked to the Iranian regime. The Hezbollah is known for being like a militia that coordinates its military action, but also its foreign political decisions quite closely with the Iranian regime. And therefore, fears are quite high that Hezbollah might play a role when Iran plans a retaliation attack against Israel. So people here are scared that this might worsen the situation in the country, because then in a further retaliation attack, Israel could also escalate further its military actions here in Lebanon. But a second fear, of course, is also that if things between Iran and Israel continue to escalate, that we are one step further to this very often talked regional war, that the war will not only stay between Israel, Gaza, Lebanon and Syria, but that it will become bigger and bigger, and that of course has bad influences for the whole region, and this is why people here are so afraid.
Yeah, and just briefly perhaps, Stella, staying in Lebanon and the conflict there, what's the latest you can tell us?
Well, here in Beirut, we had yet another night of airstrikes. Yesterday, a little bit before midnight, the Israeli army started to attack the southern suburbs of Beirut. Local media has reported that Israeli forces have carried out 7 airstrikes within 30 minutes, and that was quite heavy and widely heard here in the city. Also during the night, quite closely after Israel started its attack against Iran, it also carried out sonic bombs over Beirut that were heard in other regions as well. I know for people in the north of Lebanon, in Beirut and even further, who woke up to these massive sounds of explosions that then turned out to be sonic bombs. But of course, that's very frightening when you're asleep during the night and you wake up to these massive, massive sounds.
All right, journalist Stella Männer there reporting in Beirut. Thank you so very much, Stella.